Hello and welcome to our Engineering Superstars podcast. This series is part of our ongoing commitment to champion diversity, inclusions and excellence in engineering. I'm Guy Haughton and I work as a regional manager at Pertemps, and I'm proud to support talented engineers in finding exciting opportunities across the industry. Today, we are thrilled to welcome Lina Huertas from Microsoft UK. Lina has been working 15 years in manufacturing environments and innovation and digital technologies. All sounds very exciting, Lina.
Wow.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the kind introduction.
Fantastic. Let us start with you maybe giving an insight into your current role. It all sounds very interesting. If you could talk us through.
Yes, of course, and it's quite strange because when I first was approached by Microsoft, I was thinking, well, what am I going to do at Microsoft? I'm not an IT person, but that's the whole point of my role, actually. So at Microsoft, our mission is to focus on helping people and organizations achieve more. So, of course, we need to be very focused on what those organizations are achieving, and that depends on the sector. So we have a team that is focused on industry specifically, and we have different verticals, and I'm part of the manufacturing team. And my role is to work with our customers that are usually the largest manufacturing organizations in the world, to help translate their business-specific needs into technology solutions. So I'm kind of technology agnostic, and I'll help them define what can we do together inside Microsoft. How do we get the best of Microsoft and the best of our partners as well to put together a solution that will help businesses in manufacturing achieve more? So I think that's kind of the very quick summary of my role.
Can I just ask, how did you evolve into that role then?
I suppose it's a combination of definitely not by design necessarily. So I have always I'm a mechanical engineer, but since I started studying mechanical engineering, I have always been on the kind of digital side of things, and I've always loved programming. I've always loved artificial intelligence and digital systems and things like that. So I have always been kind of doing both in parallel throughout my career. And I suppose that's what kind of took me to having this profile that is a little bit of a mix and therefore not as usual. And that's why I ended up at a place like Microsoft, where actually that combination of skills is quite useful to make that translation I was talking about. But it's never been by design, I suppose, just by a passion for both things.
So it sounds very interesting. And from what you say, I'm sure brings with it many challenges. What do you love most about the role?
I think it's the ability to be involved in problem solving and using technology to solve real problems, not theoretical problems. So I just love hearing about what's happening in the industry. What are the nuances of what different businesses are trying to achieve? What's their level of maturity? How their opportunities that they have, but also sometimes the challenges that they have. Having the opportunity to hear about it, learn about it, and work with a very large, capable team to come up with solutions around it is brilliant. And obviously at Microsoft, we're very lucky that we have such a broad portfolio and partnership ecosystem, because it almost means that we can almost do anything, which is a brilliant position to be in. Yeah, it's quite an exciting role. As you said, challenging, but I think most things that are worth it are challenging.
Of course they are. Of course they are. And do you work part of a very big team?
It's I suppose it's relative. We are a large team, but I'd say relatively small in comparison to the size of Microsoft. But that's the industry team that I'm officially part of. The reality is that I tend not to work as much with the team that I'm part of. I work with what we call V team or virtual team. So for each of the manufacturers that we work with, there'll be a person who owns the relationship, and there'll be a person that's specialist in data and AI and in business applications and infrastructure and security. So I tend to work more with that virtual team, which is obviously massive. I mean, there's always more you can find, and that's one of the great things around Microsoft. You know, someone brings you a completely different topic, and if you work hard enough, you'll find someone who knows about it, and you can kind of bring them in and make them part of the solution.
Of course you can. Of course you can. So how diverse is your team? Do you have many female engineers as part of that team?
Yes, it's actually quite diverse. So, because I work with the V team, I'm the person who's closest to the industry, and the V team tends to be closer to the technology side of things, to the digital side of things. And it's actually quite diverse. Still not quite what it should be, but definitely better than, for example, when you go to the manufacturers we work with. I think you start seeing less diversity, and maybe in the industry side of things, slightly less diversity. But there's, I think in my career, I have definitely seen a difference, and I've definitely seen more women in my field, and I've seen more women in leadership positions as well in my field. We're still not quite there yet, which is challenging given the skills shortage and the talent shortage in both sectors.
Absolutely. But it is very positive that we are seeing a change, and you know, let's hope there is an upward trend with that going forward. Can we go back a little bit, actually? And can I ask what sort of first sparked your interest in engineering?
I think it's always kind of hard to say for sure, but I think there's this saying that you can't be something you can't see. And I think it's having plenty of chance to see it when I was growing up, because one, my dad was really interested in cars, and we were always, as a family, we were 2 girls and 1 boy. And we were in extended, actually, we were more, but we were all treated the same, and we were all given the chance to go and have a look at the engine, or, you know, when I was learning to drive, Dad would have taught me how to do a quick fix in the engine at the back. And they also have a small manufacturing business. And because they both worked during holidays, they didn't have many other options other than bringing us to the business and kind of giving us jobs there. So we had plenty of chance to see machines, materials, kind of production lines, design. And I think just, having the chance to do it really got me involved. And I think the digital side of things is just recently that I was reflecting, because I kind of never thought anything of it, but I was reading the Bill Gates book, the recent book, and he was talking a lot about his kind of early experiences coding. And actually, when I was at school, only in year 9, I think, year 9, I think I must have had some sort of start teacher that decided that we all needed to know programming. This is probably 90, very early 90s. And we had a class around programming, and then we didn't have programming again until I was at university. But just that experience made me love computers and love programming from really, really early on. So I think having those experiences, real world experiences, must have had something to do with it, because from very early on, I said I want to be a mechanical engineer.
Which is amazing. And was that your first exposure to STEM subjects, would you say?
Definitely the first exposure that I remember. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that, but I think that programming class in year 9 would have been my first exposure to it. We probably would have had, I suppose, maths at the time, but I don't have any. I have vivid memories of maths later on in my life, but that early on, I think my first big memory is that programming class,
which is amazing. So clearly, that has triggered that spark of interest for you when your subject tutor had come in and made you all go through that class.
And it just shows you the role that parents and school plays by defining basically the environment that students and children have access to, because really it's just hard to imagine yourself as something that you don't know. So if you don't know something, you're probably very unlikely to become it. But if you've had the chance, if you've had the exposure to it, then it suddenly becomes a possibility.
Of course. Now, I've heard a little rumor that when you were younger, you had a real interest in crafts as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I used to. So I used to like things that were kind of logical and building. So I used to have, I don't know, maybe it was a little bit obsessive. One of the things that I used to really like to play with was something, it wasn't Lego, it was just these wooden blocks that had different colors and different sizes. And somehow I was obsessed in putting them all together in the right size, decrementally, exactly fitting to this little tower and doing it again and again. So I think maybe I've always had this thing about, yeah, I don't know what it is, construction, logic, or
You crafted your own jewelry?
that was much later on, kind of relatively recently. When did I do that? Maybe about 10, 15 years ago. It was great because there are certain processes that I never had the chance to kind of get very involved in, even being a mechanical engineer. Like soldering, for example, and shaping metals. You kind of study these things a little bit in theory because the usual equipment used in manufacturing is quite big and difficult to get access to. But I think in jewelry it's quite nice that you have that same art in a way, but in a very accessible way. So you can go all the way from design, manufacture, finish, wear it at the end quite quickly, which is very satisfying, actually.
Amazing. And what would you be saying to any young ladies or young women that are potentially interested in pursuing a career in engineering? How would you encourage them to pursue that goal?
Yeah, I think when you don't have the people creating the opportunities for you, you kind of need to work hard at creating those opportunities for yourself, almost orchestrating those opportunities. And I think career plans are important in a way, but they're a little bit theoretical. Ultimately, what it means is what are the experiences that you have, and they'll take you somewhere. So making sure that if you have an interest in it, that you use what you have around you, whether it is a project at school where you have a little bit of freedom defining what it's going to be about, or even defining when you choose your topics for exams or your choices during school in terms of topics. That's important to have a look at that as well. So I think it's kind of crafting those opportunities. But also one thing that I've learned, and I've probably learned it quite late in my career, I could have done with this quite a while ago, is just the power of the network and building that network without people necessarily building it for you. If you don't ask, you don't get. So asking people for introductions, asking people for conversations, asking questions to the people you have around you, asking people to point you to other people. And that's extremely powerful because one, it can give you access to knowledge that you don't have, but also in the future, it might be that it is the connections to those people that leads you to the next maybe education move or career move. So I think those two things are quite key.
What other challenges have you found along the way, developing yourself as an engineer?
I have to say that I think that the challenges, I think people have always treated me as an equal to my male peers for most of the part. So I think I've been quite lucky not to have felt perhaps that I'm facing challenges that others aren't. Perhaps maybe one is that I think there's a little bit of truth in when people say, women will see a job description and they'll say, there's this 1% that I can't do, this 2 or 5% I can't do. I'm not sure if this job is right for me. I won't be able to justify and tick all of these boxes. I'll leave it. And then I think usually a male will be a lot more confident and say, I can do 70% of this job. I'm definitely going for it and I'm going to get it. And this, I think, is maybe a framework of mine. I don't know why we do this. It's a matter of confidence. And I think we do need to be comfortable stretching ourselves into things and being more confident. And I think it's a mix of building the right experiences so that we can be confident. But there's definitely something around just being more confident regardless of the experiences and having a go at things, because growth comes from putting yourself out of your comfort zone, not staying in your comfort zone. So there's always going to be that 10, 15, 20% that you need to stretch towards and learn. And to be honest, if you're applying to a job where you can do 100% of it, it's probably not worth taking it.
Of course, of course. Can you think of a project that you may have done as you were maybe at university, you really enjoyed doing, that really spurred you on to aspire to where you are now?
Yes, there's always a couple of projects that I always remember that I absolutely loved. And one was very simple. We were just given an egg, and there was in my university, there were a couple of buildings that were joined by a bridge quite high up. And the challenge was just find a way in this period of time to drop your egg from this bridge and it not breaking. And I just absolutely, no bounds about what you could do. And I always remember that we did with my team was the material. English is not my first language, and sometimes it falls. But packaging material, this kind of thing that you can never recycle, the white bit that goes around tellies. So
yes,
that material
absolutely,
with marshmallows inside stuck to it, and then the egg inside. So there wasn't a huge amount, just that, and we dropped it and it survived, and I couldn't believe it. And that was brilliant. And I think it was just that freedom of coming up with things and trying things. And the other thing, it's a little bit technical, but we had this project, we were studying metallic structures, kind of crystals. And we were told, okay, these are the different shapes for these metallic structures. You need to go and build it with round elements that mimic the molecules, and with something flexible in between that mimics the bond. And everyone went and did it, and the idea was to break it and see if it would break in a specific way. And I wasn't able to break mine. So my lecturer said, okay, we'll take your thing to an instrument machine that is a material testing machine, and you'll just put it basically between two plates and compress it. And it was just brilliant to see how this thing, I did it with ping pongs and double-sided tape. And when you put it in this machine, you could see exactly, we were studying something called the planes of breakage. And this thing broke exactly in the theoretical plane that you could see in the book. And just seeing how what comes up in the book happened for real was brilliant. I found that really kind of inspiring and motivated. Yeah.
That's amazing, though. So you've described two different projects. One that's so simplistic with the egg, and then going from that to another one, which is a lot more technical and a lot more specific, which is great. And were they at two different periods of your time at uni? Was one maybe at the start and one maybe towards the end?
That's right. I think that the first one was probably first semester, kind of straight in. You know nothing about this, just have a go. And the other one would have been probably second half of my degree, when you're gonna need to know a little bit more. But I think it's actually not the technical side of things. It's how the lecturers engage with students and give them things that help them try things for themselves and support that, because this lecturer decided to take part of his lunch break to take me to the lab to do it in the actual machine, and he had to be there. He could have said, okay, well, don't worry, your thing is very strong, so we'll just leave it and look at the other students one. But he decided to come with me to do that, and I think that made a big difference.
So that takes me on to a point of how important do you think mentors are in part of your growth?
I think he's like day and night. I think I definitely wouldn't be here without that teacher who decided that programming at whatever 10 years old was an important thing, without other teachers at school and other lecturers at university, and certainly my bosses as well throughout my career have all had a role, and other mentors. But I have to say primarily I have been very lucky with my bosses, and they've all had a role in supporting me, putting opportunities in front of me, but also challenged me and put and kind of pushed me towards kind of out of my comfort zone. And I think that that's everything, because some people have done it themselves, and there are people who have huge amount of self-motivation, and, they do it and they fight. But sometimes it's, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's the thing, that mentors can open up that little door for you and expand what you think maybe is not possible, or what you don't even know is there in terms of career possibilities or opportunities, projects, contacts.
Do you think with that encouragement and that insight from mentors, educational establishments, showing the opportunities within the field, will drive the representation forward in this particular sector?
Yeah, 100%. They all play a massive role, including parents as well. Parents are the first and probably most lasting influence, or at least primary carers anyway, are the first and most lasting influence in people's lives. So I think all the way from parents to teachers, mentors, I think we kind of all have that duty in a way, and we have to all challenge ourselves as well in that role. And sometimes we don't realize that we're having that role, but a lot of the people we're talking to on a day-to-day basis, even if they don't call you a mentor, a conversation can have a huge difference sometimes.
So you have your own children. Are you hoping that they will follow a similar pathway?
I kind of, part of me, yes, I would love it, but I try not to kind of make it explicit, to kind of push them in that direction. I kind of want them to be whatever they want to be, but there's this little part of me inside that says, yes, they need to be an engineer.
Do you see any sort of, sparks of interest in them now, or are they fairly small?
It's an interesting question. I think my daughter is 1, and she hasn't quite shown what way she might go. With my older son, he definitely has a huge amount of memory, attention to detail. He likes language. He loves building as well. So yeah, I don't know. I think you could go either way. Even though the secret part of me wants them to be engineers, kind of both with my husband, we try to give them a breadth of experiences. And there are other people like grandparents, uncles, aunts, they're all part of giving them a breadth of experiences that hopefully is wide enough for them to find their passion.
Absolutely. What do you think schools, particularly in the early years, what do you think they can do to encourage children to work towards being more aspirational within this sector?
I would say, I haven't quite thought about it, but I'm kind of thinking a bit on the fly, but I would say 3 things. One is projects, because I think when you have real world problems to solve, that just motivates people and children when you feel that you're doing something that actually matters to someone else. Another thing that's important, I think, is just be really conscious about being at the edge of technology and giving children exposure to that. And I had been quite lucky that I had that, maybe not wholly throughout, but certainly, this person that decided the programming and 10 was important. Certainly throughout my career, I always had people and lecturers who had done a PhD recently in that field and therefore knew the latest of the technology. And I think that just puts you in good stead for making sure that you have the right starting point. And the other thing is, I think it's never too early to give children exposure to the real world, whether it is visits or whether it is people in the real world visiting them, or later on apprenticeships, internships, work experiences really early on. I had, kind of unofficial work experiences, just forced experiences since I was 5 or whatever. And just seeing the world for real and understanding how it works, and also having conversations at home about the real adult world. I think all of that gives people or children exposure to decide what they want and progress towards it.
Which is great. Do you think that because children are so tech savvy now, that we will see a natural progression of interest within more technological fields?
Yeah, well, it's a really good question and so I think yes, but at the same time, there's this part of me that says because children have access to all of this technology, we're going to have to find a way of challenging ourselves in a different way. And I'm not 100% sure what is that different way, because we're kind of right in the middle of this revolution, really, isn't it? And I think, again, it's down to universities and schools and parents and everyone else to understand what are going to be the skills that are going to be relevant for children when they come out into this new world. And as I said, I'm not 100% sure what is the answer, but I have the feeling that at least part of it is going to be what we consider soft skills that are not really kind of that soft, the ability to collaborate, the ability to build relationships quickly, the ability to understand complex problems, critical thinking, all that sort of thing, I think is going to be quite important as we move forward. Collaboration, I think, is going to be really important because problems are going to become so complex that it's going to be quite hard. I mean, it already is quite hard for one single individual to really have a full understanding of all the parts of a single problem. So almost you can't solve the problem without collaboration.
Absolutely. Wise words. So, as someone who's navigated a global career, what advice would you give to young girls, especially those from unrepresented backgrounds who are thinking about a career in engineering?
I think the important thing, no matter whether you're unrepresented or in what kind of demographic or situation you are, there's something that you can't control, right? What you can control is what you do from that starting point. So I think whatever your position, I would just say focus on having those experiences, because ultimately I think in my experience, my career hasn't necessarily been shaped always by my conscious decisions to go a specific way, but because I have done things that I'm passionate about, some other people see those experiences and they kind of naturally drive you to opportunities in that field. So I think focus on experiences. If you do what you love and you do it well and you work hard at that, you'll build experience and that'll kind of naturally guide you. And of course, you can be a lot more focused and proactive around your career plan, but I think the basics is the experiences. And as I said before, also a network is so important. I've seen it, there are aspects around being visible and not selling yourself, that sounds bad, but just making sure that you're raising visibility. A lot of people do the work and not always worry about showing that work and putting it out there. Then showing your work and building that network of people who are relevant to the thing that you're passionate about. I think those two things are key in developing opportunities.
Which is great. Absolutely great. What do you think is still driving you today? Have you got some goals, personal goals that you're striving to meet?
Yes, I mean, I love my current role, and I think there's still a huge amount of scope in my current role. So I think I'm really eager to kind of explore all the possible dimensions of my current role. I think for now I'll kind of focus on that, because in the position that I'm in, there's not necessarily like a natural progression that is clear, because I'm in the combination of two different fields.
Very much.
I think kind of doing what I preach a bit. I'm currently focusing on getting the most of the experiences and opportunities I have in front of me by adding value and learning at the same time. It's probably kind of a good time to do that as well, because it's challenging at work, but also kind of challenging at home with young children. So it's, as all parents know, it's a bit of a juggle.
I'm sure. And during this fantastic journey that you've had from when you were little and you were going with your father to the manufacturing plants and then that passion grown from there, has there ever been a point where you've actually thought, no, I want to go and do something completely different?
Not really. I don't know. There are things that are interested to me, like maybe one day if I retire running a spa or a hotel or maybe a cafe. There are things that I'm interested in, but I know that none of them would be as exciting as what I do. For me personally, we were talking about it with my husband the other day, and he was saying, for example, would you be interested in going full-time coaching? Because I have a lot of respect for that, and I think it's fantastic. But it's something that I think is great. I would do it part-time, but actually for me, being involved with the technology and the tinkering and the problem solving and knowing kind of what's next, the potentially driving what's next and innovation, all of that, I find it really motivating. It and my work is hard, but it's also my passions. So no, I didn't think I've kind of seriously ever considered leaving my career.
I think it sounds like you're just a natural problem solver. Would I be right in saying that? You're always trying to find a solution to problems. Is that how you would describe yourself?
I think so. Maybe too much. Maybe are some people.
But some people genuinely have that sort of motivation, don't they? Do you watch a lot of quizzes? Do you do a lot of riddles? Do you like all the things like that?
Not really, actually. I think maybe kind of my job is kind of so full on, and I do it so much that kind of when I finish and when we're over with the kids, kind of we tend to watch all the things. I do love biographies based on technology and non-fiction books about technology and computers and all that. So books about, as I was saying, I read Bill Gates and Satya and Elon Musk and the stories around all of those companies and industrial revolution. But in terms of when I'm watching something, it's time to kind of switch off and watch something else.
Amazing. Well, it really has been fantastic speaking with you today, Lina. You truly are an inspirational representation of a female engineer who is really at the top of your game. And it's been wonderful talking to you.
No, amazing. Brilliant talking to you as well, Guy. Thank you for having me.